We're live. There we go. Yep, we're live. Welcome to everybody that is watching on politicsandguns.com/live on YouTube, on Google+. And we're going to do what we normally do when we have an interview. We're going to go ahead and do that first, and then we'll go into our regular show. So as a reminder, you can join us, and you can ask questions as well. You can use the Q&A app if you are watching on Google+. You can hit the Q&A and ask us a question on air live. We will answer it right away. If you are in the chat room at politicsandguns.com/live and you want a question to be asked on the air, just enter it there. Susan is watching the chat room as we speak, and she'll make sure that we are aware of it and get the question asked. So I think we're ready to go ahead and record the interview then. And Gary, if you want to jump in just like last time, because that headset is so sensitive, just if you want to jump in, Gary, just hit the microphone button there, and you'll be ready to go. All right. Let's go ahead and start the. Let's come back in 5. Hey, and welcome back. Joining us for the interviews section today is Jeff Hulsey. You might know of Jeff because he is the person that John and I wrote about that was having problems with the National Association for Gun Rights. Jeff, thanks for joining us on the air today, man.
Oh, glad to be here.
Well, to get started, I wanted to for maybe the people that missed the episode where we talked about what we wrote about. Let's just go ahead and start with your story from the beginning. You were in receipt of you have a private email address that is not in any way connected to the National Association of Gun Rights, right?
Correct.
And you started receiving some emails that probably weren't intended for you. Can you tell us a little bit about how that started and what you tried to do?
Well, they probably had originally gotten my email address because I had contacted them to ask about something simple. Got it resolved. You know, it was just I was looking for some favor from them, a couple of stickers for my gunsmithing toolbox.
Okay.
I got those. Didn't hear anything from them again, didn't expect to. In August of last year, I got an email that looked like an internal memo. And it was someone else's email generated by their Contact Us page. They were asking a question, and it had been misforwarded to me in an attempt to get a follow-up or a rebuttal.
Okay.
I sent them back a reply and said, hey, I think you sent this to the wrong person. You might want to look at your email lists. Didn't think anything about it. The next month I get another one. This kept going on about once a month since then. I have contacted them via their webpage. I've contacted them via email. I've contacted them via Facebook, all in an attempt to get them to fix this because they're distributing some really personal information from these people. You know, you've got email addresses, names, phone numbers in some cases. In one case, the guy talked about where he works. Mm-hmm. And specifically the location of the facility he works at. These are things that can get people fired or stalked. Mm-hmm. I've got email addresses from kids who are grade school students.
Including phone numbers, right?
Yes. I can tell you exactly where this kid goes to school, and with a little bit of work and really some social engineering, I could have a lot more information about that student than anybody should ever have.
Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you work in IT at one time?
Yes, I was the high-end, high-dollar firewall guy for decades. Yeah,
so you're aware of what has to happen. I mean, you're aware of data security and what can happen if things go wrong.
I've seen it. I've seen what happens when things go wrong. Yeah, I've been the one who was called in to try to clean it up.
Sure. And so you tried contacting them. You tried, and that fell on deaf ears. You got absolutely no response, right?
Right. They did not respond to the emails. They did not respond to their contact us page. Apparently, I'm guessing here, but maybe they forwarded it to the wrong person for a follow-up.
Yeah.
Whoever runs their Facebook page did finally respond with a copy of their privacy policy, as if that were going to prove that they had not done anything wrong. When I followed up with, that's great, but that doesn't tell me that you haven't done anything wrong. In fact, from what I'm looking at, you violated your own privacy policy. Their response was one word. Huh?
Mm-hmm. We got the same response.
I followed up from that. And I said, that's an unacceptable response. This is what's happening. I have the evidence to prove it. I'm going to the press. And they said, no, this was just an isolated incident. And
month
I
after
asked
month.
them, how does several months worth of these emails sent to multiple recipients, because I'm not the only one who's been getting them. I've already seen comments on the web from people who say that they too have been receiving these. How is this in any way an isolated incident? They stopped responding to me. Essentially, no comment, I guess, is what that means.
Well, we received comments on our blog post about it on the Polite Society podcast webpage. More people saying exactly what you said. They had received the same sort of forwarded emails that they should never have gotten. So you're certainly not alone.
So do we have how many documented cases do we have then?
I have saved 4 exemplars, and I deleted the rest.
Well, but those were all addressed to you, right?
Those were forwarded to me, specifically
John,
to
do
me.
we have other people that received what we presume to be unintentional internal emails?
At least 1 or 2 as comments on our own blog post.
Okay.
Here on politicsandguns.com.
Okay.
So yeah, and that just when we wrote up that, we had to start with, it's still getting huge hits. The biggest. We are an audio podcast. That's our primary function. I have in the past written 1 or 2 blog posts, but our main thing we do is the podcast feed. Having said that, the most hits on our website ever in one day came from that blog post. Also, that one particular post continues to get in the hundreds sometimes of hits per day. So the message is certainly getting out there. Now, since the story went live, I understand that they contacted you and said that we corrected the problem, but with no other details they gave you than that, right?
Yeah, that was during this was just an isolated incident claim. They said it's been fixed, but they wouldn't say how. They didn't say how it happened. I didn't need to know who was responsible or exactly what they did. A simple, one of our employees mistakenly merged 2 email lists, and we've scrubbed all of our email lists to remove any non-internal addresses, and that would have been sufficient, because that's the correct procedure to make sure that kind of thing doesn't happen again.
Mm-hmm.
To go further than that, had I been the one handling it, I would have made an attempt to contact the people whose information had been shared mistakenly and apologize at the very least. I'm sorry, but we accidentally forwarded your contact information to unknown parties. Please forgive us.
Right.
Because that's only the right thing to do in that case, but nothing. No. They said, it was an isolated incident. It's been fixed. Go away.
Wow.
I contrast that with my own company, which is a large insurance company, we had a data security breach from a former employee. We sent out 700,000 letters. Most people probably weren't even affected. We paid for each one of those people a year's worth of data security, credit security. And we had to report it to the attorney generals of multiple states, along with Department of Insurance in multiple states. And for NAGR to just blow it off is ridiculous.
Well, the difference there is that you're looking at credit information and banking information and a clear-cut potential for identity theft.
Absolutely.
Whereas in this situation, it's more a case of the potential for stalking and the remote potential for identity theft.
Right.
And there's no government agency that regulates the email information and the contact information collected by charitable organizations. And I use that term loosely in this case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would rather call that failed solar energy company from a few years ago a charity.
Right.
You know, I really don't see any difference between the way those are being operated, but that's beyond the scope of why I'm here. That's a personal rant, I suppose.
We do rants well here, so just letting you know.
Well, maybe someday you'll let me rant.
Absolutely.
You'll know if we give you a number.
No, there you go.
See, you're number 18 on the list, now serving number 6.
Just don't skip my number. I had a grocery store do that once, and I gave them hell.
So while we put the blog post out, we've gotten a lot of attention on that, and I have personally sent emails again and sent requests for comment again, and nothing has happened. My biggest thing with this was, and what I couldn't believe was, when I was setting up when we were researching this and we were working it out, we sent a request for comment, and we got back, just like you did, the privacy policy. And then we sent out a reply saying, are you sure that that's, you violated your own privacy policy? Are you sure that's all you want as your statement? And we got back the same one-word response. Huh.
Which tells me that the same person answered your queries as mine.
Mm-hmm.
One individual, not an office, which means they've got one person taking care of their Facebook page. And it's someone who didn't check with an upper management before they answered these questions, maybe?
Mm-hmm. Well, and this is an organization that last year got $7 million in donations.
I need to start a charity.
I'm telling you. I believe it was either Third Power or it was I can't remember who, but somebody in one of the blogs that linked to us said it just seems like another example of amateur hour over at the National Association of Gun Rights. And I couldn't agree more. I don't like the way they raise money myself. That's another total separate issue. I don't like the way they raise money. They use fear. They use things like that, which...
How about lies?
Yeah.
Do you remember the email that they sent out saying that they weren't allowed to recommend candidates unless you were a member?
Wow, no.
That was a piece of legislation that had been proposed years before and had failed in Congress. But they were claiming that it was the truth, and when questioned about it, they said, and it was Dudley Brown himself who went on a forum at, I think it was AR15.com, who said, no, this is actually the law in several states, but I have yet to be able to find a state where that's the law.
Well, the major problem I had before this with National Association with Gun Rights is I have a good friend here, Adam Turner, in Sioux Falls. And Sioux Falls used to have an executive order from the mayor's office saying that no guns were allowed on city property of any kind, which included the parks and all that. And then, well, there's state level, there's a state law, that preemption law, that says you cannot do that.
Right.
Well, my friend Adam he asked the local group that's affiliated with National Association of Gun Rights. I say local, they're located out in Rapid City, which is 5 hours away. But anyway, they basically said, well, we'll help you if we can, and got nothing. He sent National Association of Gun Rights. He sent Dudley Brown a request for help, and we don't handle state issues. And then, so he basically himself stood up to the city council, got it reversed with no help from anybody, and all I could really help him with was getting him on the air and giving him a good attaboy. But it was Adam Turner that did this. All of a sudden, you know what? Next email that I get from them, we did this great thing in South Dakota.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
we've got a problem with preemption laws being ignored here in Texas right now.
Yeah.
And I keep expecting to see it finally reversed in court, and then I'm waiting to see who comes along and claims the credit for it.
yeah.
No shortage of people willing to take credit for something somebody else has done.
Yeah, no kidding. I much prefer the old President Reagan way of doing things, and that is, just so long as it gets done, I don't care who gets credit.
Yeah.
But Dudley Brown seems to be doing the opposite.
It doesn't matter who or how many people were involved in fixing the problem. Is the problem fixed? Great. Let's move on to the next one. Maybe the same people can help us there.
Mm-hmm.
You bet.
Or maybe somebody else with a different skill set can.
Well, we're coming up on the break here, so I do want to thank you so much for joining us and for coming on the air and talking about this with us. I've been meaning to get you on since the blog post came up, but I'm not on the air as much as I was previously. So, and I really wanted to have you on when I could be here to talk with you as well. But I want to thank you, Jeff, for joining us on the air today, man.
Anytime.
All right, hang on, everybody.
Questions about IT stuff or gun stuff, gunsmithing, let me know.
Oh, boy. If you're willing to give us help on IT, I might burn your email inbox up. So,
Yeah. As long as there's nothing that's going to require physical presence.
all right.
I don't travel anymore.
All right. Well, hang on, everybody. We'll be right back right after this. Okay, very cool. Oh, good Lord. Oh, okay.
Yes.
What?
I was just YouTube
Oh, yeah, I was
buzzed.
telling everybody to come over and join us in the
Yeah.
chat room.
Is there anybody in the chat room besides you?
Yeah, Rob's here.
Oh, Rob's in the chat room.
Colmie's here. He was up here last weekend. Matt.
Oh, okay.
And where we're at. And Anonymous.
Tell everybody we say hey, and tell Matt thanks for coming up last week.
I did. He was going to try to come up next week, provided the IDPA match doesn't go long.
Okay. All right. It's up to you, Jeff. Do you want to hang out for the whole show? Do you want to buzz? Do you want
to... Actually, I suspect that I'm going to get a phone call here in a minute. I've got loaned my car out this morning, and they should be bringing it back here anytime soon. So.
Okay.
And here I thought you were going to say that Dudley Brown was going to give you a call right after that.
I would have to answer the phone and say, huh? And you hang up the thing.
Say, huh?
I just, oof. No, I routinely, I try to help out. I can't do a lot anymore, so when my friend comes to me and says, yeah, can I borrow your car for the day so I can go to work? Yeah, no problem. I've got insurance, you've got insurance, here's the keys. Bring it back in one piece and make sure you fill the tank. Just like when the neighbors come to me and say, what kind of gun should I buy for home defense? Well, let's see, look at your frame here. Hold this, how does that feel in your hand? No, how about this? How does that feel? Let's go take a look at what's available to you. Go to the range and rent something and shoot it and see what you like.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I'll give you advice from there on what kind of ammo to pick and what caliber to go with and the whole 9 yards. And no, I'm not going to charge you for that because that's a safety issue.
Well, and you're being a neighbor, so thank you, Jeff.
Well, yeah. It's the neighbor across the street says, "I've been thinking about a rifle. Can you help me pick out parts for one?" Yes. I can help you do that. Or, my friend living in Kentucky contacts me and says, what kind of ammo should I use for this pistol for home defense? You want to pick something that does this and something in this range, go with this kind of a round, see what you got from there. And of course, I'm always defending high-point pistols on the forums because people don't use them enough to actually know how they work.
Oh, boy.
They're inexpensive, they're cheap, but they're
Yes.
blowback operated, so they're very sturdy. There's not many working parts in them.
That is true.
But
However,
you cannot fire the cheap Walmart ammo through them. They will stovepipe every time.
Ooh.
how many
need plus
people?
P ammo.
How many people that buy those can afford decent ammo?
Or even know that they're supposed to shoot the decent ammo.
Also, have you ever felt a more uncomfortable gun to shoot in your life?
I have, but I fixed it. The backstrap on that high point has a burr on it, or it's a piece of flash from the mold.
Okay.
So I filed it down, and then I took a bit of tool bed lining and cut it and glued it over that, so it's a nice rubberized backstrap now. It's actually really comfortable to find.
All right. Well,
I bought one for tinkering. I figured if I can make it run, I'm a good gunsmith.
there you go. Well, I'm gonna. we better get to recording here so that I've got a half a shot that when dinner's ready, I'm done. So
We can keep chatting right through dinner, I think.
hang on just a second. What's going on, guys?
Stop by and say hi to his father.
I think chatting right through dinner is the perfect plan. Keep it live.
It's part of Paul's weight loss program, actually.
Yeah, right.
Better than mine.
All right, gentlemen, are we ready to record this intro?
Yeah, I'm ready.
I'm going to go ahead and jump out so that I don't step
Ready.
on anything.
Alrighty,
All
take care,
right.
Jeff.
Bye, Jeff.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks again, Jeff,
Thank you.
man.
Glad to help anytime.
Okay. Yeah, I think unless we want to change anything, I would think we're ready to go. All right, Rob,
Ready.
John, are we ready there?
I'm ready.
Okay, coming back in 5. Hi, and welcome to Polite Society Podcast, recorded live Saturday, May 3rd, 2014. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm John Richardson, and tonight we'll talk with Jeff Hulsey. Jeff is the retired gunsmith that we wrote about on our website a little bit more than a week ago.
I'm Rob Morse, and we have our regular news segment and stories of defensive gun use.
So, climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 234 of the Polite Society Podcast starts right now. Ba-da, da-da-da-da-da. Okay, Gary, I'm going to have you in on this as well. When you're ready, when I throw to you, I'll mute my mic. So, we ready to? I think we're just going to freestyle the catch-up.
Sounds good to
That's
me.
all right with you guys. All right, coming back in 5. Hey, and welcome back. We are live from ABN Army Surplus in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. As always, every Saturday night, we're going to change the time, though, but every Saturday night, 6:30 p.m. Central Time, you can stop by, say hi, watch us do the show, and even jump in if you'd like. This is our catch-up segment here, and first on my hit parade of faces on the bottom of my screen is John. So, John, since the last time we recorded, man, what have you been up to?
I went to work.
You went to work.
I went to work since we just recorded on Wednesday. Really have not done much with guns, though. I visited a client this morning, went over their financial plan, and at the end of it, the husband shows me both a 16-gauge L.C. Smith double that had been his father-in-law's, along with I think it's pronounced Ortgies or Ortgies. It was a German 7.65 short Browning 32 ACP pistol that he was trying to figure out how to take down. It was a neat little German pistol. So I have done something with guns this week. Not much, but and now I'm looking. I'll be sending him some stuff I found on the internet about how to take it down for field stripping. It's not as easy as one would think. So
field stripping?
Field stripping some of these older pistols.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, with it, because there was no takedown pin. So,
yeah,
so I'll pass it on. So I'm going to pass it on to Rob to see what Rob's been up to.
I've had great fun. The other night, I took some friends through some dry practice. As he said, you can go through. You can be a quote gunny and shoot at a square range where you rent a stall and never, ever carry a loaded gun. So this couple was just getting their head wrapped around that. They've done a couple of competitions where they would be loaded in the setting of the competition, although it's not concealed carry. And they all of a sudden they went, there are things called like barriers and walls and rooms, and what's all that about? So before dinner and drinks, we went through using a finger gun to slice the pie and discuss the fatal funnel of doorways, and so they would go hide in their house, and one of them would shadow me, and then we'd trade back and forth, each of us, rotating, taking turns, and at the end of that, they went, wow, that's why you put the cell phone next to the bed at night, because you don't want to do that unless you absolutely have to. And in point of fact, it's why the dogs say, or the police say, heck with that, send in the dog. This morning I shot a steel match. It was great. Halfway through that, a friend was having trouble hitting the target, and someone went, maybe it's the sights. Well, he was shooting a 1911, so I just traded guns with him. The bad news is it wasn't the sights.
Ooh. Were you able to correct the problem?
It's the software between his ears.
Okay.
Most likely the trigger finger. He's slapping the trigger and shooting left.
Ah, yeah, that would do it. That would do it.
How about you?
You were able to at least diagnose the problem then.
That his gun hits the target when you point the sights at it. Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, actually, before we go with me, I'm going to go ahead and throw it over here, and as soon as I can find the, there we go. I'm going to go ahead and ask Gary what he's been up to since the last time he was on.
Well, I actually think I probably have had a better week than most of y'all. I had a wonderful opportunity to be out in Deadwood, South Dakota during the blizzard this last weekend. So there you go.
And that's a good thing?
Well, I was out there for the military, the National Guard Conference.
Oh, okay.
And also for the police chiefs and sheriffs conference. So while I was out there, I had a 3-day conference and a 3-day break and a 3-day conference. And during my 3-day break, of course, it was a blizzard, so I couldn't get out of the hotel for 3 days. So
crazy.
It was the sad part. The wonderful part about it was that, and you guys have really liked this, they always have a guest speaker, the lead speaker, keynote speaker, at the banquet. Well, the keynote speaker at the police and sheriff's department banquet was talking about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. That's what the keynote speaker was about. And basically what she did is she challenged the police department, and I thought this was really good, because we've got excellent police up here in Sioux Falls and in South Dakota. We really do have good sheriffs, good police chiefs, decent police forces most everywhere you go. But her challenge was, everybody who gets sworn into office raises their right hand and says, I solemnly swear to, defend the Constitution of the United States, defend the state constitution. And her question to the police was, how many of you have even ever read it? And it was amazing. The room stopped. She said, how many of you, when you raised your hand and said you swear to defend the state constitution of the state of South Dakota, have ever read it before you swore, read it since you swore, ever? The same with the U.S. Constitution. And then she talked about the details in that to get the guys involved on how that in order for them to be able to defend something accurately, they had to have read it and understand it. And even if they read it 20 years ago, they needed to reread it. And so she had come to me earlier in the event and asked, because we have those little pocket U.S. Constitutions available, and she had picked up a bunch for me and then had laid them out on the dinner table in the banquet. So you got all this fancy stuff in the banquet, and then you have a copy of the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights on your banquet table. And she did just a fabulous job. Got a standing ovation when she was done. But she was really impressive about talking about the importance, due to what we've seen. How many videos have we seen over the last month, 2 months, 6 months of cops acting poorly, either in apprehending somebody. Most of the time, we get the videos all the time of the bad cops with the innocent people. She was really nailing it to that part of the reason we're seeing such a giant influx in poor police response when dealing with somebody and their constitutional rights is because, quite honestly, many police officers simply don't know what they are. And if she wanted the South Dakota police chiefs and the Sheriff's Association to understand that everybody who carries a badge, their firstmost responsibility is to protect those rights. That's their primary job. And in order to do that, you needed to know what they were. So it was, in my opinion, an absolutely fabulous keynote address. I was really pleased I had a chance to listen to her. This gal is one of the senior instructors up at South Dakota's Law Enforcement Center. And I'm going to step on myself here, but I believe it's in Watertown, South Dakota. So I had two great opportunities. The National Guard Conference, always a good conference. Get to meet all the enlisted, the senior enlisted guys with more stripes on their shoulders and more stars on top of those stripes than you could possibly count. And then spend 3 days with the police chiefs and the sheriffs, and it was an absolutely fabulous experience. That was my week.
Well, has it warmed up since you got the blizzard earlier this week?
Well, yeah. Of course, it managed to get to 60, and the snow started melting the day I left yesterday. It was so cold up there, I actually had to have Gomer, our company diesel, plugged in the entire time I was there, because the evening temperatures and early morning temperatures are 20, 22, and that old diesel has trouble starting on that. Now, in the end of April and the first part of May, so the 29th to the 30th of April, they had a foot of snow and no travel advisories for 2 days up there in Deadwood. So
when will all that melt and we'll start to see floods downstream?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's probably all melted by now. But you remember that, you guys all remember maybe about 6 months ago, very big, late fall, early winter. In fact, it was definitely in the fall now that I think about it. They got like 4 foot of snow out there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they killed a lot of cattle.
Killed cattle and all that kind of stuff, yep. And then they haven't got much the rest of the year. I mean, they got that 4 feet, then pretty much an occasional inch or two here, and then this foot. So it's
Gary?
Weird weather.
Gary, to go back to the law enforcement officers, I was talking with a local law enforcement officer I shoot with, and he goes, unfortunately, there are millions of laws and regulations, so the best we can do is figure out the ones our administrators want us to enforce.
Mm-hmm.
Is that is that the heart of the problem?
I think it's the heart of the problem when you get into the bigger cities. South Dakota only has the two, Sioux Falls and Rapid.
Right.
Everything else is kind of small towns.
Right.
So our officers have the advantage up here, I think, of being able to interact with the community on a much closer basis.
Okay.
I mean, we've got whole entire counties out here where the cumulative total of the sheriff's department and the police departments covering 16,000 square miles is 4 guys.
Wow.
So, you're talking about a really huge territory that these folks have to take care of. And, of course, part of it is that South Dakota's got a unique situation in the sense that the two towns, here in Sioux Falls, are about 160,000 people. But then the next biggest town to us is only 60,000 people. And then you drop way down below that when you go to the next town because the total population is only 750,000.
Yeah.
So South Dakota's rules and regulations are far easier to understand because they're just, in general, less of them and simpler than you go many other places. And the police have a much better opportunity to interact with the public. So.
And therefore, it's easier to apply the regulations fairly.
Yes, yeah. And, in many of the communities out there, I think, and I'm going to just use New Orleans because we've all seen several videos on New Orleans. When an officer has to react to something, it can be quite confusing because, and the ones I'm remembering now off the top of my head, it's like a couple of them just recently where they were afraid of the cell phone.
Yeah.
They say, well, you had a cell phone out, so I'm going to arrest you. You got to put the cell phone away. Well, that's the reaction, unfortunately, of maybe a big city environment. So those guys have got a whole different kind of a pressure to deal with because out here you're more likely to have the sheriff say, I got a video in my car if you want to use it because it'll take a better picture than the cell phone. I mean, that's the reaction. Or they're going to say, if you really have a lot of questions about this, let me finish what I'm doing and then I'll go buy you a cup of coffee. We'll talk about it. You can interview me. You can ask me whatever, I mean, it's a much more one-on-one basis, even in Sioux Falls. So it's a different environment. I think that Joe's emphasis, the gal who did the banquet keynote, was to remind those guys that regardless of all of the other rules and regulations and laws they have to try and remember and deal with, was to set all of those aside and remember that first and foremost, what they swore to do was this.
Don't violate the Constitution.
Right. And if they would keep that in mind, you'd probably end up with a lot less because almost all of those videos we've been seeing coming out, getting on the police about having done this or that, have to do with the fact that they forgot that very basic first thing they did the very first day. My first job is to protect the U.S. Constitution. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. It does sound like it sounds like you had a good week, even if the travel was a nightmare.
I did, and I'll try it for one of the next shows. She's actually printed her speech in one of the local law enforcement magazines. And I'm looking at Paul because I'm saying I will try my best to see if I can get a hold of that for one of the next shows so that we can let everybody know where they might be able to find that online. Very worthwhile.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
Maybe we can put it in these show notes, too.
Yeah, possibly. All right, I'll see what I can do. I'll kick it back over to you for a few seconds, Paul.
All right. Well, maybe even possibly if there's a way we might investigate finding out if we can get her on as a guest at some time as well. Yeah. So, with me, what's been going on with me? Well, I run my tail off. Had doctor's appointments on Monday and started the research process for my hazmat for the truck. Started a new diet because in the process of talking with the doctor, my blood sugars are almost under control. For any normal person, they look really good. However, the DOT regulations coming up that are new this year, they're not quite good enough. So trying something trying something a little new that way. As far as guns, didn't do a whole lot. It's kind of hard to do anything with guns when you're driving 14 and off 10. So,
Yep.
I do plan on. I hope I can get to a range tomorrow. I'll have a couple hours available, and I hope I can get out and actually throw some rounds downrange. We'll let you know next weekend if I was able to do that. That's about it with me. Other than and the other thing, one thing I love about I run regional now, which means I run my basic area is my home base is Sioux Falls. I go as far north as Fargo. I go up to Minneapolis a lot. I go as far east as Chicago. The farthest south we go is Kansas City. We occasionally get out to the Indianapolis area, but it's very rarely get out there. And St. Louis a little bit. But that's kind of the area that I run in, and I have to do a whole lot less of the firearms tango and arming and disarming because most of the states up here, with the exception of Illinois, are fairly gun friendly. So,
well, I know Rob and I both noticed that Indy seemed very gun friendly.
Oh, I love Indiana's gun laws.
Well, that was a great location when you think about it, and I didn't really get it until I was driving home. Hour and a half, and I'm in Cincinnati.
Yep.
And you figure you're probably, 2, maybe 3 hours to Chicago, 3, 4 hours to St. Louis. Louisville is an hour and a half.
Nashville is probably 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very centrally located.
Very much
Nashville next year. I've told my wife that we are definitely going to Nashville next year, so I'm looking forward to that.
I'll be there because it's a 5-hour drive. I'm happy.
There you go. Well, we're running a little long. Let's go ahead and jump to break. We got a ton of news to go over. Well, I don't know about a ton, but I got one that's going to take up a good amount of time. So let's go ahead and jump off to break here. And when we come back, we'll do news. Hang on, everybody. Right back right after this. Okay. When Gary comes back, I want to have him jump in on one of the segments here. At the end of one of the segments, we'll do a kind of live promo for him. That way I don't have to add it in the I don't have to add it in the editing. So, news. John, you want to do we have just you and me, John? Is that all we got? No, Rob's got one in there.
On what?
News stories.
Hey, dude.
One? You 2, 3, 4. Holy crap, you guys have been busy.
Hey, Rob complained about nobody putting stuff in, so, well, yeah.
So, you're doing the 2 Floridas?
Yeah.
Broward and Tallahassee?
Yeah.
Okay.
Almost one. Yeah, it's all one thing.
And I want to contrast that with Madison and Indiana? Help? Iowa?
Idaho.
Utah? Idaho. Close enough. And Paul, I'm going to tease you a little bit about some statistics that came out about Chicago.
Okay.
Well, when I do the Broward County thing, I definitely would want comments from Paul, because one of their prohibitions is against truck drivers carrying firearms within their county. Whereas they said
they can't do that.
I know. Common carrier truck drivers. Common carriers. Well, they can't do it.
That creates a protected class. Can't do that.
They can't do it because there's a lot of things they can't do that they're trying to. So, well, if you guys are ready,
they're dialing for political contributions. Is what they're doing.
Before we go off, before we go back, I want to. Simon Says Train, and I wish I would have seen this when we were doing the interview. But Simon Says Train has a comment in the Q&A section here says, I never had a problem with my High Point JCP in 40 S&W. I've fired reloads, steel case, and anything else I could find through it, no problem.
Okay.
Well,
You know, I'm really torn on myself. I am really torn on the High Points. They are the cheapest, junkiest feeling gun I have ever felt in my life. They feel like a toy. I don't like them, but they are also the cheapest new gun you can buy.
Mm-hmm.
And they fit a niche. If you
Yep.
can't afford anything else, you can afford a High Point. So, I don't know.
A friend of
Except
mine has
other-
one that keyholes.
Other than going to buying something used at a pawn shop where, for maybe about the same price you get a Smith & Wesson revolver, like a beat up looking Model 10. So whatever.
Yeah.
But they serve a niche. You're absolutely correct. So, well, I lost Paul.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, just didn't see you. So I'll come
I'm
back.
leaning over by Gary. My hand is, see, there we go.
Okay,
Now I'm back.
I will bring us back in 5. Hi, and welcome back to the Polite Society podcast. In the news segment, we are going to open up with a story about our favorite new gun safety organization, Everytown for Gun Safety. Mark Glaze, Executive Director of Everytown for Gun Safety, announced his plans to resign in June to, quote-unquote, do other things. Glaze had been the director of Mayor Bloomberg's Mayors Against Illegal Guns since 2011. He had helped orchestrate the merger of MAG with Moms Demand, Action for Gun Sense, or whatever they want to call themselves, late last year. Glaze said it was time for him to hand the fight off to someone else. While there is no official word on a successor, speculation centers around John Feinblatt, who previously was the chief advisor on gun control issues while Bloomberg was still in the New York City mayor's office. Of course, they could always go with Shannon Watts, which would make many of us in the gun rights community happy, given her proclivity for both lying and making errors.
Isn't there a term in sports, they call it an unforced error?
Mm-hmm.
I believe they do.
Meaning it wasn't one that someone else caused you and it's self-inflicted?
Yeah.
Yeah. God, I'm hoping Sharon gets a new job.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me really who they put in the head of that thing. His whole stepping aside kind of, how, whenever a politician gets caught doing something they really shouldn't be doing, like looking at the wrong kind of pornography or skimming funds from somewhere they shouldn't. When they resign, isn't it always they resign either for the health reasons, quote unquote, or to pursue other options?
One more is I want to spend more time with my family.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you forgot that one.
Yeah.
In Glaze's, I think what's happening is that Bloomberg wants his own man in there, someone that he has worked with longer and he can have some more control over. And he wants somebody he goes back a long way with, rather than Glaze, who's essentially been there since 2011 and is really just a political consultant in D.C.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Well, Paul, if you're ready.
Yes, sir.
Paul has a speech, a lecture, a tirade, a tear. Look, he's about to espouse, advocate, lecture, and pontificate. Darn it, here is his rant. Paul.
Okay. Yeah. Well, this got started. Chris, one of our faithful Facebook friends, sent us a link to this. And this isn't directly gun related, but he sent us a link that he thought we would be interested. Now, for those of you that have been long-time listeners to the show, you know that we've spent a lot of time covering the Benghazi attack right when it happened, and for quite a while after it did. We've had Anthony Millay on several times to talk about it, and I've still been following it, even though we haven't been covering it directly on air. Well, this week, email surfaced, thanks to Judicial Watch. They forced the Obama administration through a Freedom of Information Act request that was initially denied, and they sued, and they won, and the Obama administration was forced to release some emails related to Benghazi. The emails show that the Obama administration was directly behind the changing of the story from the attack being a attack to, well, it was all about this YouTube video, and that's the story. You remember they came out with that story right away after the attacks was, oh, this was all about a YouTube video, and then they arrest the poor guy that made the YouTube video, and if I don't miss my guess, he's still in friggin' jail.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, for political reasons, they changed. They didn't want it to look like a failure, so they changed the wording, and they put it out as it was a demonstration went horribly wrong. Well, this week I listened to a lot of Fox News as I'm driving around. I have satellite radio, and I can listen to the audio feed of Fox News on satellite radio. And Thursday, retired Brigadier General Lowell testified. He's an Air Force general. He testified in the House of Representatives, and he clearly stated that there was no attempt to assist the victims of the attack because the State Department would not request help. They were basically begging the State Department to request help, and the State Department would not do it. One phrase out of his testimony that just sticks in my head: we are trained to move towards the sound of guns. The State Department refused the military that action. This was a 7-hour attack, the attack on the consulate in Benghazi. Then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton released a statement at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, that September 11th. While the attack was still going on, she released a statement about that attack. She had time to formulate an opinion and put a statement out while the attack was going on, a 7-hour attack, just to let you know that she was in the loop. That proves Hillary knew what was going on. That Hillary knows, by that means, in my mind, either Valerie Jarrett, who is the president's chief of staff, or President Obama, provided he wasn't asleep, because we also found out this week through an interview on Fox News that Brett Baer did that he was not in the Situation Room that night, because the gentleman Brett Baer interviewed was, and said the president was not there. But anyway, at any rate, there was time to issue orders. There was time to effect a hopeful response from the military. This is a 7-hour attack. Now, I was looking up on the internet today, and this is not scripted. Rob and John, I'm sorry if you're trying to follow along. It ain't going to happen. It's not there. I looked up on Google Earth today. Ramstein Air Force Base to Benghazi, 1,400 miles, air miles. 1,400. It's a little over 1,500 from Bagram Air Force Base in forgive me, Pakistan, not Pakistan, Afghanistan. 2 hours flying time at the speed of sound. About 4 hours flying time for an A-10. 4 hours out of 7 if they would have started it right away. They had a live picture from an overhead drone. I am not Air Force. I tried reaching out to some people. I wasn't able to get any Air Force information today. They had a drone overhead. I know there are armed drones that are in that area. I don't know if there are any specifically in Libya or not. But I know over Iraq, I know over Afghanistan, there are armed drones. We've taken terrorists out with armed drones. I don't know if the drone overhead that night was armed or not, but I know damn sure, and pardon my language, but I know damn sure we could have had airplanes. We could have had air support within 7 hours. There is no reason that couldn't have been done. And where I'm leading to is this, and this is where it comes into the politics and guns. We have an opportunity. I've heard many times, why have we not impeached this person in the White House? The reason we haven't impeached him is because we can't, because there are too many Democrats in the Senate. We have an opportunity to get rid of this guy. What has to happen in November is we have to have the control of the Senate. We have to get 60 senators that will vote to impeach, and we can do it. I don't have numbers in front of me. I wasn't able to get my research totally complete today, but there are enough senators up on the Democrat side that we could actually theoretically get 66. But I know we can get 60. It's all but a done deal. We're going to get 51. If you want President Obama gone, the only way it's going to happen is if we get a minimum of 51, and we need 60 for a realistic chance. If there was ever a reason to get involved, now is that time. We've got primaries coming up. No matter who wins the primary, make darn sure that the person that wins the general this fall doesn't have a D behind their name. That's kind of where I was going with that. Comments, questions?
Well, you had talked about Ramstein and Bagram. I'm not sure if you realize it, but the U.S. Air Force has a base in Aviano, Italy, which is outside of Venice, which is a little closer. And as I understood it, there was an aircraft carrier not that far off of Libya. They could have sent a couple of F-18s.
Mm-hmm.
But even still, less than an hour's flying time, hour and a half flying time from Venice. Even closer than Germany.
And again, a 7-hour gunfight. 7 hour that thing went on.
Have you seen pictures of the ambassador as he was being brutalized?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what was happening. And I think since they were running guns to, was it Syria? And they didn't want that to come out, and they just made a political calculation that they could hide the entire event just before an election. That's at best dereliction of duty. And I just don't think they care. They own the media will cover that up for them as long as there's a media.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, guys, has it come to the point, especially now with places like Fox News, ABC News even was going toe-to-toe with President Obama's press secretary.
John Carl,
Is it come to the time? Yeah. Is it come time where the media is starting to, regrettably, very late, but finally starting to turn around and find out that these people aren't our friends?
I'm going to wait till I see more evidence than just a few isolated events before I reach that conclusion.
Yeah. All right. Gary, do you want to chime in on anything?
Well, watching the same programs you watch, and I'm just thinking back to the beginning, I think it's reasonable in this particular situation for everybody to look at the time frame prior to the previous election and understand that some of this was probably done to protect the president's image prior to the election. Unfortunately, and I may be somewhat in agreement with you about the election and the impeachment if you were looking at it from multitudes of reasons why I don't agree with the stance of this particular president. But the rage, you went on a bit of a rant, and I've seen this rant here in the store a lot from other customers and clients. If the president may not even have actually known, now maybe he should have been there, should have been in charge, should have been aware.
Yes, he should have, very much so.
But the cover up or the things we're finding out now happen, I doubt he was aware of any of that, personally aware of, nor did he personally give orders to say, hey, give this kind of presentation for Rice when she went on the talk shows that day and talk about the video and talk about the rest of it. I think that sometimes what happens is, and I'm going to go all the way back to Nixon. Nixon was guilty of what he did after the fact, but he didn't tell his people to go out and do that. It's just those people were also his friends, and when they got done doing the bad stuff, the Watergate stuff, and they came back and he found out about it, he tried to protect his friends, and that's what got him burned. But he didn't know about the Watergate thing up front. I think that a president's world, under most circumstances, maybe not so much this guy, because he does seem to take a lot of time for himself and other activities. But oftentimes, it's if you can imagine a president's day, I mean, it's just from 6 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock in the morning, with all sorts of things you have to deal with. It must be an intense issue, and whether or not this should have been on the top of the list is perhaps arguable. But I don't necessarily think that he was aware that somebody was going to send an email and change some talking points and that people were looking out for his best interest in the process of this whole thing. So when I look at blaming the president and the White House for what they have done or what they stand for, I have a tendency to subtract somewhat what their people do. The difference is, and I think Chris Christie proved it on the bridge thing, when you find out about it, you deal with it. You fire your chief of staff. You've known her for 20 years. You've loved her like a brother or a sister. They screwed up. You fire them. That was Nixon's problem. He didn't do that. If he'd have done that, he'd have stayed president. Obama's problem, same thing. Just not wanting to deal with the really tough decisions when you know your people have been wrong, standing up and saying you were wrong. My argument is that if you get to that 60 senator deal, I would consider actively saying impeach the man, but I would do so for some of the things that I think he's violated constitutionally.
Sure.
But Benghazi wouldn't actually be one of them, because I don't see any proof from all the news that's come out with the last email and the rest of it, and from the beginning time, that other than, like you say, being incompetent, not doing his job as well as he should have as President of the United States, that he did anything deliberately deceitful or that he did anything deliberately illegal. Just that he's a bad president. But we've known he's been a bad president for 6 years.
Well, there's no shortage of things we could impeach the man on.
Yeah.
We have Fast and Furious. We have a number of different things. This is at the top of my list as things that make me mad.
Man, that I'll agree with you on. Yep.
We left those people to die for political reasons.
I agree with you 100%. Yep. And we had a whole variety of abilities to not have left them there, like you say. A whole variety of situations. an unbelievable amount of ammunition in the gun, so to say, to have dealt with this issue. More than enough trained people, close enough, as you commented about. I just think that when we look at the whole situation, almost every president lives through something that they get either credit for or blame for. I know a lot of liberal friends I have a tendency to blame Bush for going in, not finding any weapons of mass destruction. Well, they forget that back then it was, the guy didn't want to answer the question, did he have them or not? So the intent of our going in was to say, you either tell us you have them or prove to us you don't, or we're coming in. It wasn't that we knew there were weapons of mass destruction. It's that we knew the guy wasn't answering the questions the United Nations was asking. But Bush still gets blamed for getting us into wars, they say unnecessarily. Well, I look at it and say it was necessary. It was absolutely necessary. So I understand the liberal point of view on that. So when I look at the things I want to blame Obama for, Benghazi just isn't one of them. I blame Secretary of State Clinton. I think she'd have lost her job in a heartbeat over it. Just like in Fast and Furious, if I were going to impeach anybody or fire anybody or send anybody to jail right now, it would be our Attorney General. Because, I think that guy's just flat crooked.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's provable back to that guy, provable back to him, that says this guy was guilty of violating the Constitution. President Obama, 6.5 years, I've just determined that the same way I felt a year before he got elected. Not the brightest bulb on the tree. Still not the brightest bulb on the tree. I think it probably was after Rice was even on the Sunday shows before he was fully aware of what the hell happened. Incompetence, yeah. Fire him, not hire him again, but I don't know if you can impeach a president for being stupid. That I'm not sure of.
My whole point in this, though, is that what I'd like to see is the deaths of these poor people as a catalyst for getting him out. We've got a multitude of reasons we could impeach the guy.
I agree with that.
Using this as a catalyst to get into position where we can do it. We've got a comment on the Q&A app. One of the many problems I have about the Libya attack is the press Obama and Secretary of State Clinton did afterwards, saying it was a spontaneous protest and an anti-Muslim YouTube video was the cause. I agree. They knew right away that there was no connection. The Brigadier General that testified in the House knew while the attack was still going on that it had nothing to do with that video.
Well, I agree with that. I don't have any. I have no question with any of that because when you look at the whole picture, the first thing that comes to my mind is stupid. How blatantly ignorant can that whole entire group of people have been? But it's not uncommon, I don't think, in any presidency, to try and cover stuff up, to try and mellow it down, to try and soften it up, to try and not make it look as bad as it was. Doesn't matter if it's a conservative president in an issue, or a conservative governor, or a liberal one. It's just that until somebody proves to me, actually, Clinton should have resigned immediately or shortly thereafter, or been asked to be let go because she didn't handle it right. I don't think anybody who looks at this situation clearly would ever elect her in the next election, but she may win anyway, but nobody should. Even if I were going to vote Democrat, I would think of maybe 5 or 6 other choices I'd go with before I go with the woman who was responsible, in my opinion, for Benghazi.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know that if you're going to go for impeachment, I think that you have to be able to prove that other than trying to mellow out a bad situation a couple of days later, because quite honestly, on that day, he could have been shooting pool. Like they said, he wasn't even in the Situation Room. Yeah, pretty stupid. But I don't know if you can impeach a president because he wasn't in the Situation Room. And I don't think you can impeach him even if he was stupid enough to say something stupid like that video crap afterwards. I still don't know if you have enough to impeach him on. To impeach him, you have to almost prove that he either broke the Constitution or he lied to Congress in one way, form, or another. Clinton, whom I didn't actually even think was all that bad for a Democrat, wasn't all that bad a president. We sure had worse.
Mm-hmm.
But they were going to impeach him. And honestly, it was the same thing. If he'd have just stood up in the beginning of this thing and said, yeah, I had sex, and yeah, it's none of your business. Right? Wouldn't anybody have walked away and been fine? But it was the lying to Congress about it. Well, I really did. Well, yes, I did. It depends upon your definition of it.
Yeah, what the definition of is, yes.
Yeah, exactly. What got him in trouble. So I don't know that you can impeach a president for being stupid. And in this particular case, I think that's what you got. You got in a president that probably didn't even know what was going on because he was so damn busy doing something else minuscule that it really didn't soak into him how bad the situation is until those guys were already dead.
To say it another way, blatant corruption may not be illegal and therefore impeachable.
Right. Very good way to put it. Yep. There are some people who should, like you say, you ought to be able to go back to the Secretary of State and say, it was your job to know. It was your job to respond. You're now out of a job because you didn't do your job. So if I were looking at anybody that was responsible for it, I would put more blame on Hillary Clinton for her act in this thing, because she was supposed to be the person who would have, even above the military, she could have made the decision. Even if the military said, well, we're not sure we should go or not go, she could still 2 hours into that thing have said, I don't care what you guys think, get a group in there and we'll deal with it later.
Yeah.
What we're running really long in this segment, so what I'd like to do, yes, quite all right, man. What I'd like to do, if I could, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a break, but what I'd like to do, Gary, if I could, is I'd like to do a live break, because your segment is coming up for where we do the ABN ads. So rather than hearing something again that we said several weeks ago, let me ask you, what's been going on here around the shop, man?
Well, I'll tell you, the biggest news is the reason that I went out to both the military and the law enforcement thing out west was because we just kicked off the new names associated with ABN. Some of the guys will start seeing changes on the Facebook page, changes in the email, newsletter, and on the website. They'll see the names ABN Tactical and ABN Supply coming along with ABN Army Surplus. So what we've done is kind of expanded the philosophy of ABN, and the store, ABN Army Surplus, still going to do just always what it's done. 70% new, 30% surplus, best quality military equipment you can get, best made tactical equipment, National Tactical Ops Association equipment. But where we were maybe running into a little bit of an image problem, and that is that we have a whole select group of professional customers, law enforcement people, for example, security people, medical airlift, EMTs, EMTPs, private ambulance services, that take a different handling, to say. They take a different amount of time and a different amount of energy, because we're dealing with something where maybe somebody wants to order, 25 $500 jackets for their air ambulance crew. So that's now going to be handled by ABN Tactical. So that we've got a complete division now that is being set aside, time, personnel, equipment, to deal with nothing but our professional customers. ABN Supply, another group, and that group is going to deal with our wholesale and our commercial customers. And then ABN's Army Surplus is going to continue doing what it's doing. So we've got a new name now. We call it the ABN Family of Businesses. And we're advertising ABN Tactical, ABN Supply, and ABN Army Surplus, so that folks get used to the fact that the website will offer 3 venues. The store will be there. The store will always be here. Someday we hope to expand to a second store and a third store. There'll always be ABN Army Surplus. That name was put together by Ed and Roxy Zanobi. They did a wonderful job in the 20 years that they're doing it. My intention is to continue to do everything the same way that Roxy would like me to do it, even if she's not here watching over my shoulder every day. Every day I think about how would Roxy do this. That's what I want to move forward with. But I do want to let the customers know, particularly the listeners out here, that if they say something like this brought to you by ABN Tactical, that's us. That's just more of the tactical line, things that you might not be able to pick up in the store. Bulletproof vests. We're going to have a line of that to be able to order. We won't have them in the store, but you'll be able to order it off the website. Hearing.
And speaking of the website finally is live.
It is. Can't hear Paul? Hang on. I think that's because I have to hit this.
No,
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Speaking of the website finally is live.
Now I got to do that now. Okay, so the two. Yep. Yeah, it is. We finally got it up and running. In ABN Army Surplus, we're starting to put the tactical name out there and the supply name out there as well. And we have some product up. It's a slow process. Guys, all I can tell you, and I got to tell you the whole audience this because I know I'm new, and to the other two out there, and I apologize because this is my first time on, so I'm just learning the ropes here. Hopefully I'll learn it a little bit better as we go along. But many of the things that we do because of my age, let's just say well into the 60s, okay, we will be able, I have to learn how to do it. So the website is the same thing. There's some product up there, a lot more coming next week, a lot more coming the week after that, a lot more coming the week after that. But I will hope people will go up and take a look at it and give us their opinion. Do they like it? Do they not like it? Do they like the color scheme? Is it easy to order stuff off of there? Yeah, this has been new for us, but we're looking forward to being able to have a national presence now instead of just a local and Midwestern presence. So.
Let's go ahead and run it back. Let's go ahead and run back to news then. Who's got the next story? I know it's not me.
I do. Professor John Lott started an Indiegogo campaign to raise $300,000. This would start the Crime Prevention Research Center. The CPRC's goal is to counter the bogus anti-gun research that's being funded by major donors, such as George Soros' Open Society Foundation and the Robert Woods Johnson Foundation, not to mention money from Michael Bloomberg. Now, the funding for the anti-gun research is really aimed at going around congressional prohibitions on using the Center for Disease Control where they might promote gun control as a public health issue. Professor Lott's Indiegogo funding will let the professor hire additional research associates, gather data, and continue research on topics central to the gun debate. $500,000 would fund Professor Lott's center for a full year. You know, this research will help counter the lies pushed into the mainstream media by our opponents. Our opponents would be willing to curtail both our gun rights and our civil rights. Speaking personally, I'm in, and gentlemen, I'd like us to give a shout out to every one of our listeners who contributes and lets us know about it. What do you think?
I think that's a good idea.
Sure. I'm good for that.
I also have the next item up. Louisiana State Senator Neil Reiser sponsored legislation allowing active and retired law enforcement officers in good standing to carry a concealed firearm any place open to the public. There is a qualification, though. They can't drink or be on medications when they do so. That's essentially constitutional carry in Louisiana. The bill passed through the House committee on a voice vote, and it's expected to pass. Why is this news for us? It's just another perquisite of having a badge. Who cares? Here's why it's interesting. It's common knowledge that concealed carry license holders are less likely to commit any crime, particularly a firearms violation, than are law enforcement officers. So in Louisiana, if we're trying to minimize risk, then civilians should be the first group, civilian concealed carry holders should be the first group admitted, not law enforcement. I wonder if the Louisiana legislators thought of that, or if they were appeasing part of their law enforcement bloc. Any comments?
I would agree with you. Louisiana is Louisiana, and you can get drive-through daiquiris, which doesn't to me seem like risk avoidance, but that's another story. But the next story, I think, illustrates Rob's point exactly. Two drunken New York Police Department cops fired their guns in separate off-duty incidents, and both cops were arrested this week. Officer Brendan Cronin was behind the wheel late Tuesday night when he unloaded on a 47-year-old man who was a passenger in a car that was idling in front of him, striking the passenger 6 times.
Wow.
About 3 hours later, outside a strip club in Somerset County, New Jersey, NYPD Sergeant Wanda Anthony fired at least 1 round at a former boyfriend and his new girlfriend. In this case, no one was hit. Anthony fled in her car and was pulled over and charged with driving while intoxicated. It gets better. Earlier that week, off-duty detective I'm probably going to massacre this, Poggy, shot his partner through the wrist after each had downed at least 11 drinks in the Rockaway section of Queens in New York City.
Holy cow. Yeah, but, please keep in mind, only police and military should be armed.
That, Paul, I hate to tease you again, that's not what the stats say.
I know.
Well, I've got the next story. Florida Carry has sued Broward County in state court for violating the state of Florida's firearms and ammunition preemption statutes. The county has refused to change its ordinance, which attempt to regulate the possession of firearms and other weapons in certain areas, such as the non-sterile areas of certain airports, etc. Included in the Broward County ordinances are prohibitions against the possession of a firearm, switchblade, knife, club, etc. by common carrier truck drivers, such as Paul. They have a second lawsuit, and the second lawsuit is against the city of Tallahassee, and in this lawsuit they are joined by the Second Amendment Foundation. Tallahassee's ordinances prohibit the discharge of a firearm for any reason in the city's parks and recreation areas, as well as any place other than areas zoned agricultural that are larger than 5 areas. Any reason includes self-defense. There is no statutory exemption for self-defense.
So if you defend yourself from assault, you're automatically, you violated this ordinance?
Unless you're in an agricultural area, yes.
That's bizarre.
It is bizarre.
If they were, I hate being a smart aleck. I almost said something bad, but being a smart aleck, if they were in Colorado, the whole state's agriculture, because they're growing weed all over the place up there now.
Hey, Paul, before we leave Florida, when I pull into a truck stop sometime, I'll see a trucker. He essentially walks by with what looks like a short bat, hitting all the hitting a bunch of the tires to see if, I assume, if the inside ones are flat. Is that common, or was it just unusual that I saw that?
That is absolutely. We all do it several times a day. I personally, I don't use a bat. I use a big ball peen hammer.
Yeah. All right.
But yes, that's exactly what we're doing. A lot of drivers use bats. Some use crowbars. But yeah, that's what we're doing. Is we're checking air pressures in the tires, make sure we don't have any flats.
So that's the club that's now illegal in Broward County.
And they can try to make it illegal all they want, but that would create a protected class or a second class of people, and that's not going to happen.
Well, yeah, but I just don't want to be the poor guy they mug and have to find a way to pay the legal fees.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm with you there.
Some politicians are smarter than those in Broward County and Tallahassee. This week in Idaho, Madison County Commissioners repealed a ban on guns in public buildings. That's as required by Idaho state law. Sheriff's Office, Madison Memorial Hospital, and other public buildings that had been labeled as, in quotes, gun-free zones, close quote, are now, people are now allowed to carry. The signs are coming down. According to Madison County Sheriff Roy Klingler, those who plan on committing a crime aren't going to be stopped by a sign or some lettering on a door. In fact, putting guns in good hands can actually reduce the likelihood of mass shootings and other incidents. Well said, Sheriff Klingler. Any comments?
Sheriff that gets it.
They used to call Florida the Gunshine State. I guess now that would be Georgia and Indiana, huh?
Outstanding.
Yeah. The next one here, I'm putting on Rachel's Appleseed cap, because since she's working today, I'll carry this Texas news. About 18 people showed up for a public rally of the newly formed Gregg County chapter of Open Carry Texas. The group handed out literature on Texas gun laws. What's hard to understand if you're not from around here, Texas has 254 counties. So there are lots and lots of chapters. And some of those chapters, some of those areas, it gets pretty rural and the population gets pretty thin. This is the fourth activity of the newly formed group in Gregg County. It's nice to see Open Carry Texas be active and spread. Hey, John, I threw this on you. I know you didn't post it, but you had a post on your blog, Guns in Schools Save Lives. Would you talk about that?
Sure. Purdue University has a research institute called the Homeland Security Institute, and it's run by Professor J. Eric Dietz, who in a previous life was an Army Lieutenant Colonel, as well as for 3 years director of the state of Indiana's division or Department of Homeland Security. His institute has done some computer modeling for threat assessment, and they've looked at a number of different active shooter scenarios in schools. And starting as their base scenario, their control scenario, was a school with just locked doors, no resource staff, and they found that this control scenario had the most casualties and the longest response time. Response time would be 10 to 12 minutes, average of 20 casualties. Then they said, well, what happens if we put in a school resource officer? Well, response time dropped to about 2.5 minutes. Casualties were reduced by 2/3. Then they looked, okay, what happens if it's just concealed carry holders? Figuring 5 to 10% of staff and administration have concealed carry permits and would be carrying a firearm within the school provided by state law. And in this situation, they said that to make it very conservative, these people would shelter in place and would only engage active shooters if they came into that room. That reduced response times by 10 to 15%. Casualties were reduced about 25%. However, if you have a school resource officer and concealed carry holders together, it reduced both response times and casualties more than any scenario tested. And as he characterized this as we say in the military, more friendly guns in a firefight is a good thing. Yep. They have not published this research yet, but it will be published shortly. So now the one provision I would say is, obviously this is something you're not testing in public, with live bodies, but they did it with a computer model based upon what happened in any number of school shootings. Response times, how many people were shot, the whole 9 yards. And they looked at how different ways the active shooter might go through the hallways, etc. I think it's valid, and I think it reiterates what we in the gun rights community have been saying. Guns save lives. So,
I don't know that the times would be accurate, but they'd certainly be representative.
Yeah.
There could be gross systematic errors, so you find out, only 10% of, all the times get shifted perhaps, and one is, okay.
Well, they ran thousands, and I'm guessing they used something like a Monte Carlo simulation,
sure,
but they ran thousands and thousands of iterations of each scenario.
Right.
So yeah.
Paul,
Yeah,
I'm teasing. Go ahead, Paul.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I'm teasing you again. There are more statistics.
Okay.
Well, here's the next article. Shall I tee it up?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay. The next article is more statistics about which I get to tease Paul. But I found this pretty interesting. Sociologist Andrew Papachristos reported a pretty important fact about Chicago criminals. He looked at their arrest records and mapped the individual networks between criminal gangs. When you were arrested, who was arrested with you? Well, it turns out 70% of all the non-fatal shootings occur in networks comprising less than 6% of Chicago's population. That means these few gang members are more than 12 times more likely than average to assault or to be assaulted with a firearm. Said another way, they're most likely to shoot the ones they rob or rob with. That's why gun laws that disarm the general population of Chicago are ineffective and, in fact, counterproductive. I guess every town for Bloomberg money forgot to mention that little fact when they wanted to disarm everyone. You know, I'm glad we're here to remind them and remind you.
Amen.
Yeah, I call them now every town moms for illegal mayors.
I like that. Well, let's go ahead and move off to the gun quote because we're coming up on break here again. We've got this week's gun quote is from I love this one. It's Robert Heinlein, and this is: the police of a state should never be stronger or better armed than the citizenry. An armed citizenry willing to fight is the foundation of civil freedom. And that was in Robert Heinlein's book, Beyond This Horizon, in 1942. So
that's a while ago.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Well, hang on, everybody. We'll be right back right after this. Okay, what do we got next? We've got dinner going on all around me.
Would have been the interview that
I've already done, so.
Yeah, but we could have just mentioned. I'm teasing you.
No. Honestly, I'd prefer we not do that simply because if I have to edit something, I have to make changes.
Yeah.
I have to make changes in editing. For example, and don't take this wrong, Rob, but if you say, you know, coming up next is our ad from Concealment Solutions, but if I had to change something and then I run the Mag 40 promo,
yep, oops,
you sound kind of like oops. So
who is that masked man with his mouth hanging out, right?
Yeah.
Is that your grandson there?
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw him online.
Who?
Yeah, I moved the camera so you could. I'll move it back so you can look at my ugly mug again. All right, DGUs. You know what?
We only have two?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it looks like three. John, Rob. Oh, is he?
No,
okay.
Mine's just a comment on John's.
Yeah,
okay.
Mine's a good one, though.
All right.
Naked men make it good, huh?
That's right.
Rob, you haven't brought us back yet. You want to go ahead and handle that?
Okay, great. 5. Welcome back. This is our DGU segment. John, you're first up with some comments on my state of California.
Absolutely. I think it might even be in your county.
Yep.
When Keith Groves of Point Loma, California heard a crash and then a window breaking at 4:22 a.m. on Tuesday, he jumped out of bed and looked out the kitchen window and he saw his kitchen window was broken and his garage door open. He then retrieved his revolver and confronted a man standing beside his mint 32 Ford Roadster. It was then that Groves realized that he was standing stark naked as he held his revolver on the intruder. And that was the sight the SP San Diego Police Department saw when they arrived. It was only then that the retired San Diego Fire Rescue Department battalion chief was able to get dressed. I mean, he tends to sleep in the nude, and he
Wow.
He went out to confront the burglar that way.
It's Point Loma is right on the coast. It's usually pretty cool. We've been having Santa Ana, so it's really hot around here. That explains some of it. But also, go ahead.
That is okay. Go ahead. No, I'll comment here in a minute.
One of my instructors said that the police get pretty good at telling the good guys from the bad guys. The guy standing there in, pink slippers, a towel, and a cowboy hat holding a gun, that's probably not the criminal. So standing in your yard with a gun undressed is sort of called a clue that you were asleep in bed when the break-in occurred.
Yeah. Now, could you imagine, I'm sorry, but could you imagine being the bad guy in that situation? What would make you more nervous, that the guy was armed or the guy was confident enough to be standing there buck naked and armed?
Exactly. Now, I will say, if there was broken glass, I think he was barefoot too, so you might want to keep a pair of shoes by the bed to put on
definitely
before you go out. And
definitely.
Maybe a pair of pants.
Well, from my time, when I was this is ingrained back when I was a volunteer firefighter and EMT. I, as well, sleep au naturel, let's say. And, but from all the way back then, and it's true to this day, even in the truck, when I go to bed, my shoes are ready to put on, and they're placed right in front of my pants that are just behind the shoes. When I swing out of bed, my feet touch my pants, and all I got to do is yank them up. So, yeah, should anything happen, I won't be among the people you'll see that are confronting whatever may be happening without cover where it counts.
Just to add some context to it, this is Earthquake Alley in Southern California down here. Mm-hmm. Just standard civilian preparedness. Often earthquakes will break windows even before you get much structural damage. So it's a common recommendation to have a set of shoes tucked under your bed.
Sure, and I would. Well, how do I put this other than I'm just going to be smart aleck about it. Might not hurt every once in a while. Check to make sure that they are your shoes and not shoes that shouldn't be there. Okay. Anyway, what's the next one?
I'm next up. It just happened last week. You remember the Federal Express sorting facility where all the employees were disarmed? Well, except the gunman. And, unfortunately, the security guard who was seriously wounded was also disarmed by company policy. Well, that situation was avoidable, and here's an example where there was a very different outcome. With a similar case in Texas where a construction worker had been fired from a work site. This was in the West Campus area of Austin, Texas. Well, the worker came back and threatened the foreman. The foreman then filed a police report. Again, the fired worker came back, this time with a gun, and he shot at the foreman. Well, the foreman drew his own handgun and returned fire on the assailant, wounding him. The foreman had a concealed handgun license and was allowed to have his gun on the worksite. Both men were taken to the University Medical Center, Brackenridge. The foreman suffered a serious injury, while the suspect suffered a potentially life-threatening injury. Firearms author and trainer Stephen P. Wagner notes that the fatality rate of gunshot wounds in the United States is about 15%. So being shot does not mean you're out of the fight. For this construction foreman, he was definitely not out of the fight. We have links to each of our news and defensive gun use articles at the Polite Society Podcast Forum, or politesocietypodcast.com. They're there if you want to share them with a friend.
Very cool. Let's go ahead and step back out to break. Then we've got another tips and tricks segment. This one, another in the series of Kathy Jackson's tips and tricks. And then we'll be back to close the show out after that. So hang on, everybody. We'll be right back right after this.
Gary, you want to be Rachel?
You want to be in on the show close, Gary?
He can't. His computer died.
Oh. Uh-oh. Shh. Uh-oh. Hang on. We may not be recording, guys.
It says we are.
Okay, I hope we are.
It still shows live to me.
Okay. Well,
So we just documented that one on video forever.
You need my power cord pulse, or is yours up and
I'm all right for right now.
The
Just a
NASA
minute.
scientists will figure out who spilled the beer.
did it end?
I don't know. I guys, you know what? Yeah, between the two of you, if we have to do the end of it, cool. But
We can.
can you guys just bounce back and forth while I try and get everything back up
Okay.
on my end? In case I can always just record the end of the show because we don't have any feedback. But just bounce back and forth between the two of you while I try and get everything back up here.
Okay, you want us to go all the way through the close?
Yeah. I'll pipe in if I need to.
Okay, let me do the very end. You want to do the copyright?
I can bleed the I can.
I tell you, we'll put it in, and you can
Okay.
put Rachel in if you want.
We've also, before we go on, Simon says train again. Speaking about the research we talked about at the end of the news, the research will be ignored. The anti-gun people don't want to let children see guns in schools as a positive thing. If guns are a fearful unknown, they can keep lying about how dangerous they are and brainwash the kids to be anti-gun. That's a good point.
Yep.
So, okay, yeah, you guys go ahead and do your thing. I'm going to try and get everything back online on Gary's end over here and hope we still record.
Okay, John, just because I'm listed first, I'll start, and then...
Okay.
Okay.
I've kind of gone through and done it back and forth.
Oh, thank you.
Pretty much.
Except there, you in there 3 times. I'll take the one in the middle. Cool. It's amazing how that works out. Back in 5. Welcome back. The Polite Society download app is out on Amazon for Android, and the iPhone app is in iTunes. They're located by our old show name, Politics and Guns. Hot links are in our show notes.
We're experimenting with the show all the time. Please send us an email to tell us what you like or dislike. You can contact the show by email. Email onair, ONAIR, at politicsandguns.com to hear your email read on the air. If you would like to email any of the hosts directly, just email their first name and then add at politicsandguns.com. Call 605-215-1438 to hear your voice on the air.
That's 605-215-1438. Road Gunners Mag 40 class in Conway, Arkansas at Shoot House, USA is scheduled for May 15th through the 18th. You can register from our show notes.
Also, please check out Kathy Jackson's Cornered Cat training classes. Her next class is the weekend of May 17th in Philadelphia. Go to corneredcat.com for more classes and details.
Before we go on from there, I want to mention that I've been talking with Caleb. Caleb is one of the people at GunUp that are hosting that, and the registration for that will be up supposedly on Monday. Stay tuned to next weekend's show. We'll let you know how you can register for the Sioux Falls Cornered Cat class that's coming up this August.
Also, please check out The Shooters Club by Bob Main and Bev Branham. For $75 a year, that's all of $6.25 a month, you get 24/7 access to some fantastic training and audio podcasts that you can't get anywhere else. Bob is also giving away his M&P Shield to one lucky member. You know, if luck's running against you and you don't win the M&P Shield, they're also giving away some range bags.
Oh, they're giving away ammo. They're giving away a free entry into any of Ben Branham or Bob Main's classes. They're giving away a lot of stuff.
Listen to the other podcast on the Crusader Podcast Network. And here's a shout out to our Canadian friends at Slamfire Radio. But we need to remind them that we have more Facebook likes than they do. Hey?
And we always will.
Hey, I asked some of our listeners to send me their favorite podcasts to listen to. I've enjoyed working my way through their list. I want to thank them. I would ask them to join the National Rifle Association, Second Amendment Foundation, Gun Owners of America, and Jews for the preservation of firearms ownership. Joining two makes you a hero. Supporting all four makes you a superhero in my book.
And don't forget to join your local civil rights group like the New Jersey Second Amendment Society, Arizona Citizens Defense League, Gun Owners of California, Connecticut Citizens Defense League, Florida Carry, Georgia Carry, Georgia Gun Owners, Grassroots North Carolina, Illinois Carry, Michigan Gun Owners, Michigan Open Carry.
There's also Michigan Coalition for Responsible Gun Owners, Minnesota Gun Owners Civil Rights Alliance, Nebraska Firearms Owners Association, Citizens for a Safer New Jersey, Open Carry Texas, Texas Firearms Freedom, Texas State Rifle Association, Tennessee Firearms Association, West Virginia Citizens Defense League, and Wyoming Gun Owners.
And for our Canadian listeners and their supporters, join the Canadian Shooting Sports Association and the Canadian National Firearms Association.
Before we go on from there, I would like to mention, I know there's got to be more state-level organizations than that. And all you need to get your state organization read every time we do a show is email us. Send us a link to them and let us know about them, and we'll get your organization in on our show read every time, along with a link in our show notes every time. Send us an email to onair@politicsandguns.com.
Well, that wraps up another episode of the Polite Society Podcast. Until the midweek show,
stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road. I'll edit that.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Then let me give this in my voice. This show, copyright 2014, Paul Lathrop and the Polite Society Podcast. I'll edit that all in so it sounds real good. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Okay, so what, did somebody dump a beer down the mixer?
No, well, there is no mixer yet. That's why we got three. What happened was, when I set up tonight, there are 3 laptops. I have 2 power cords. Somehow one of the power cords didn't make it. So one of the laptop Gary was running was talking on is running on battery. Battery went critical. It shut the laptop down. So
okay.
We grab a power cord and plug it in.
So I will not be. I cannot imagine a case that would let me be here Wednesday. Next Saturday, of course, we'll be live again from ABN. The Wednesday after that, I hopefully will have made it down to Arkansas and may be able to join you live from my motel room down there.
Oh, that's right. You're going to be at Mag 40.
The Saturday after we're going to be in the classroom portion of Mag 40 that next Saturday night. If I make it, I'll be stunned because everything I've heard about Mag 40 is its total overload, and and you're just wiped out. So,
yep.
Well, record some good tips from Mass and from Gail Pepin.
Oh yeah.
Will they be there?
Mass and Gail. Well, at least Mass will be. I believe they will both be there on Friday and Saturday. Wednesday and Thursday are or I'm sorry, no, I'm sorry. Thursday and Friday are is the live fire portion, and Chaz Murray is teaching that, and then Friday and Saturday and Sunday is the portion, the classroom portion that Mass teaches. So I definitely plan on getting audio from both Mass and Gail if I can get them on. I plan on getting audio from John Hottaway. I plan on getting audio from Chaz and Tommy and anybody that doesn't run fast enough that I can't hold the microphone.
Are we talking
your
about
Diana Loesch imitation?
Yeah, I will.
Dana Loesch?
Dana?
Dana Loesch.
I am sorry I missed her out there.
Yeah, me too.
I'm going to go ahead and take us offline, guys.
Okay.
Thank you, viewers. I don't know if anybody was in chat tonight. I can't watch that and try and do everything else. And Susan got kind of preoccupied. But thank you for everybody who commented. Thank you for everybody who is watched. And come join us. The guy, I won't be here, but the guys will be doing this Wednesday night, 7:30. Join us then. Good night, everybody.
Good night.